I'm Judith Nusbaum, and I'm representing the Unity Coalition for Israel. I'm here in the Negev, in an airfield in the Negev, with Ari Briggs of Regavim. And we're going to discuss what Regavim is, who Ari Briggs is, and what are our plans for the future.
Under the radar and without our noticing, worrisome territorial facts are being created. The state of Israel is losing its possession of national lands. Acre after acre, house after house, through buyouts, farming, and illegal building. Over 100,000 illegal buildings were built on Israeli land in the past few years.
Ari is the international director of Regavim. 20 years ago, he moved to Israel with his wife from Australia, and he became involved in several high-tech startups. However, after the Gaza expulsion, Ari decided that he had to become more active, and as a Zionist, he had to become more involved in the development of Israel. And here is the story of Regavim. Ari.
Thanks a lot, Judy. Regavim was actually founded in 2006. The guys who founded it understood that the state lands owned by the state of Israel, which actually makes up 93% of the state of Israel, had been abused and misused since the establishment of the state. The government, having a lot of issues that it had to deal with in the first 60 years of its existence, really didn't take notice of what was going on around Israel in terms of that misuse of those state lands. Now let me just describe, what is a state land? Now in most countries you've got lands that are owned by the government. In countries that have monarchies you have crown land as well, and sometimes they're combined and sometimes separate. In Israel, 93% of the land is actually state owned and therefore defined as state land. That was what was established in the Ottoman times, passed down to the British under the British Mandate, and then in 1948 handed over to Israel. Of course, within that 93%, you also have about 10%, which is JNF, Jewish National Fund land, that is managed in a similar fashion. What it means, state land, is the state doesn't sell its land to people who want to live in a city, a town, or a village, or set up a kibbutz or moshav. The state actually leases that land. It's usually a 49 or 99-year lease. So what we know, 93% of the land of Israel, the state of Israel, is state-owned. But as I mentioned, by 2006, it was self-evident that that land was being abused and misused in the periphery, but also in the center of the country. Now, many of us have heard of illegal building that goes on in places like Jerusalem. Potentially you've heard of the illegal building that goes on in the Negev, in the Galil, but even around the center of the country. But let me give you an example. I live in the town of Ra'anana. In Ra'anana, if I want to cover over my patio, I will within a week get a letter sent to my house which shows my patio covered in from an aerial photo that they've taken from the air, and it will have a fine attached to it, and with that fine I'll be told that on a certain time, on a certain day, inspectors are going to come and they're going to inspect the rest of my house or apartment because I've done something illegal, therefore they have the right to come and inspect it. Now, they'll come and they'll check all parts of my house and see what else is there illegal, not legal, and they'll talk to me about the patio, and I'll have to pay my fine. If not, I'll be sent to court, I'll go to court, I'll get a record against me, whether it's criminal or civil, but I'll have to pay. In the Arab towns very close to Ra'anana, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers, places like Tira, Taiba, Jaljulia, what you find is similar state land. They can cover over their patios, they can build extra rooms, they can build houses, and you don't have that same law enforcement that's happening in a town like Ra'anana. Now, if you now take that small example and actually enlarge that and look at the whole country, what you'll find is that there are many places in the country that the law is not enforced. So one of the biggest issues that was understood by Regavim already in 2006 was the Negev. The Negev, which, as David Ben-Gurion said, is the test of the nation of Israel. It makes up 2/3 of the state of Israel. And what was happening in the Negev was you had this ever-growing Bedouin population that was pretty much going out and taking over whatever land they saw fit to build their ranches, their houses, their villages. So in the Negev, what was happening was the Bedouin, some of the Bedouin lived in government-built towns, 7 government-built towns that was built between the 70s and the 90s, but a large percentage, around 30-40%, decided that they would live pretty much anywhere in the northern Negev between Beersheba, Dimon and Arad, and they went and started taking over land. This is something that's been going on for approximately 25 years, and we've got to a stage where 800,000 dunams, or what is 200,000 acres, is being claimed and being sat on by the by a large, 40% of the Bedouin population here in the Negev. Now, Regavim's job is, as a research organization, we have researchers. We have a southern researcher, Amichai. His job is to move around the Negev, understand what's going on there, and report back to Regavim what he sees. When we find there's some law enforcement issues, there's some illegal building, other illegal activity, what we do is we write letters to the authorities, whether it's a regional council, a local council, the police, the Interior Ministry, and normally we get answers back from these letters. Sometimes obviously we don't, they're ignored, in which case we take them to higher levels, either higher levels within government, or what happens in the end, if we don't get a satisfactory answer, we'll go to court. As an interested party, we'll go to court and we'll sue the government based on an issue that's happening in a certain area that we believe should be dealt with. And that's pretty much what Regavim does. We have the 3 researchers, one in the south, one in the center of the country, one in the north of the country, and we have lawyers on staff, 3 to 4 lawyers on staff, and then we have the director of operations, the head of the organization, and my job, which is to take what Regavim, the content that Regavim's building by its research, and take that information and get it exposed overseas. So my job as International Director of Regavim is the truth that we find in our research. It's very important that it actually gets out of Israel and people understand what's actually going on.
I understand that you had, maybe we could call it a landmark case that you just won with Al Zarnog. Mm-hmm. And would you like to talk about this and about the family of Ismailov, who brought the case, and what is happening with it?
Okay, so actually the Al Zarnog case is a different type of case than we're used to. Al Zarnog is in the Negev. It's a Bedouin town or village set up in the Negev. It's unrecognized or illegal in Israeli government terms. Now what's special about it is part of the land that the Bedouin, there are about 400 to 500 families living in Al Zarnog. Part of those, a large part, around 300 families, is living on Jewish-owned land, private land that's Jewish-owned. So, different from what I've just been speaking about state land, what's left of the 7%, there are pockets of privately owned land. Now, how did that become privately owned? So, the Ismailov family came from Persia in 1930 to Israel, to Palestine at the time, and the idea, they came with a bit of money and they wanted to fulfill their Zionist dream, and they spoke to those powers that be in the Zionist organization, the Jewish Agency, and the Jewish Agency said it would be wonderful if you could buy some land in the Negev. We're really trying to buy up as much land as possible so we can establish our state and own as much of that land. Buy up land in the Negev. So the Ismailov family, with many other families, came to the Negev, purchased from the British, and also from landowners in the area. There were Bedouins who did own land or claimed that they owned the land. So the Ismailov family paid both the Bedouins and paid the British authorities to get ownership of the land, which in total is 600 dunams, or about 150 acres. And They had bought the land, they had it registered in land registry. Now, after the establishment of the State of Israel, the sons, the grandfather who had bought the land, the sons had moved to England. The grandson returned to Israel in the 90s. During the time after the establishment of the State of Israel, in that time, the land that they owned in the Negev had been passed down through the generations and recorded as such in the land registry. And he came back and went to look at his land. Now, lo and behold, he realized or found that there was a Bedouin village on his land, and he didn't know what to do. Now, Mark Ismailov was actually the legal advisor for the Jewish Agency, so he had a lot of legal background himself, but he was stumped. How is it that a Bedouin village could be built on his land? But not only that, the government had actually built a school, government school, and a government clinic on his land that was providing services to those Bedouin. So he realized not only the Bedouin doing something illegal, but the government had gone and taken his land that was registered to him and built
the Israeli government.
The Israeli government. Mm-hmm. So he didn't know where to turn. He had heard about Regavim, knew that Regavim had been successful in quite a few cases in this regard. So he turned to Regavim, and Regavim gave him legal services to try and get back this land. So this case that just was completed, there was just a ruling made in the Beersheba District Court, and this is one part of the case. This is the case against the government of Israel, the head of the Ministry of Education, the Minister of Education, and the Prime Minister, and the Minister of the Ministry of Interior, was sued for building a government building on privately owned land. And it took 3 years to get to a ruling. There was a lot of hard work, and the ruling was that by July 11th of this year, the government has to move the school off his private land onto the government land that is situated very close, the state land that's situated very close and within the village itself.
Thank you. I think that there's a lot happening here and a lot of positive things happening here, and I want to thank you for giving me the time and letting me interview you for the Unity Coalition for Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith.
Ari Briggs.
Thank you.